Welcome and thank you for joining me. I'm Jerry Oginski, a New York medical malpractice and personal injury trial lawyer practicing law here in the state of New York. Today's location is a little bit different. I'm doing it outdoors. You might hear the birds chirping. It's a beautiful day here. And today's topic is about anesthesia errors and how they are often preventable. Let me give you an example of a case I handled recently involving a young man who had hernia surgery. The patient was scheduled to have hernia surgery at an ambulatory surgery facility, and he was supposed to have the procedure, stay in recovery for an hour or two, and then be sent home. Had the surgery, everything went fine, but in recovery he was extremely sleepy and groggy. So they decided to keep him there for as long as possible so that they could watch him while the effects of the anesthesia wore off. Well, by 3 hours, the anesthesia still had not worn off, and the ambulatory surgery facility was now closing. It was now 7 o'clock at night. Everybody wanted to go home. And the doctor who had performed the surgery said, you know what? The hospital's right next door. Let's get you admitted to the hospital. You'll stay overnight, and in the morning, you'll go home. Once the patient was brought over to the hospital, the nurses there are supposed to monitor the patient's vital signs every few hours. Well, by the time they got him settled in, the next time that anybody came by to check on him was about 3 o'clock in the morning. And the person that came in to check saw that the patient was sleeping and decided, he looks nice and comfortable, I'm not going to wake him up. And, you know, the person who comes in at 7 o'clock in the morning when there's a change of shift will check on him. Well, that was the big problem, or one of the problems, because by the time 7 o'clock rolled around and now there was a change of shift, the next person to come in to take the patient's vital signs walked into his room, checked on the patient, and realized that he is blue, he's not breathing, and he has no heartbeat. So immediately an emergency code was called, and doctors from all around the hospital came rushing in to try and revive and resuscitate this patient. Well, there's good and there's bad. The problem was, not the problem, the good was that they were able to resuscitate the patient. The bad was that he had suffered so much brain damage from such an extensive, long period of time without oxygen that he remained permanently brain damaged over the next week. And why do I say over the next week? Because over the next week, the patient developed every possible complication that he could possibly suffer as a result of the excessive brain damage that he had suffered. And along with that, he suffered kidney failure, he suffered infection, he suffered fevers, and on top of that, he was comatose and on a ventilator because he could not breathe for himself. Ultimately, because of all of his complications and his severe brain damage, the patient died 1 week after being admitted to the hospital. When the family came to us to look at the records, it was obvious that during the course of the routine hernia surgery, he had been given excessive amounts of anesthesia. And what's preventable and what's so sad about this particular case is that had the anesthesiologist recognized that the patient had been over-anesthetized, over-medicated at the end of the procedure, there are medications available which can reverse the effects of the excess anesthesia. This was never done. So the patient is now sent to an unmoderated, unmonitored floor in a hospital where they're not told to watch for anything significant, and the nurse or the technician who came in to check his vital signs made the significant mistake of thinking the patient was sleeping when in fact he simply wasn't breathing, which is a problem in itself. So all of those factors combined to lead to tragedy in this young man's life, and this is something that is totally preventable. And that's it for today's tip on anesthesia errors. I'm Jerry Oginski. Thank you for joining me. Have a great day.